Welcome, everyone, to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host, and we are continuing our deep dive into Visions Volume 2. And this episode, we will be covering The Pit. And joining me for all of these conversations is my good friend, Hammie. Welcome back, Hammie.
Hi, everyone.
We've been doing good on these. There's been a lot to dig into.
Yeah, I mean, I should never be surprised because Vision Season 1 was amazing too. But everyone, all these creators kind of took their chance at making Star Wars and just ran with it. They're all amazing.
It's absolutely amazing. All right, The Pit is American and Japanese. So it's a duo. The studio is Day Art Studio, and they also paired with Lucasfilm, of course, to do this work. The writer, director, executive producer was Leandre Thomas and co-directed by Justin Ridge, who we mostly know, Hammie and I, from Star Wars Resistance.
Yes.
His work as the executive producer of Star Wars Resistance. And I used to love his tweets about Star Wars Resistance. And he used to also draw like little drawings of them. I miss Resistance.
It takes us back to Resistance. I can't believe that was 2019, 2018. Yeah, wow.
But he's also well known for Star Wars Rebels and Clone Wars, as well as Avatar: The Last Airbender.
And Leandre Thomas, he is a filmmaker who's worked at Lucasfilm. He was talking about this at the Celebration panel. So Leandre Thomas, he was inspired during the pandemic to write this script, and he kind of showed it to a couple people at Lucasfilm, and they said, you know what, this could be a short on Visions. And so I think this was kind of his first chance to dip his toe into directing a short for Star Wars. So he had said he was inspired by the civil unrest during the pandemic and kind of seeing all of the signs with Leia on them and, you know, just the word resist. It kind of reinvigorated his passion with Star Wars, kind of making a difference in the world, that it's not just, you know, movies and shows that we're watching sitting passively at home. It's having a real life impact on citizens in the world. And I loved that. So and that's definitely what you can pick up on in The Pit.
There's this metatextual sort of feeling throughout the whole show that makes it feel very real world. Like this could have happened, even though it's set like in a galaxy far, far away. This could have happened pretty much anywhere.
Yes, and that's kind of what he draws on as well. He said, you know, during the pandemic, when we're all kind of sitting at home, you kind of are questioning what you're doing with your life, and you kind of see others around you ascending higher and higher, and you're stuck in a pit. It's such a great visual imagery of maybe the feeling that many of us were having during that time.
Yep. So it's setting in this place, this like it's sort of like a desert, maybe inspired by California. It looks very dry, where the Empire is forcing prisoners to dig kyber crystals to get to like out of a pit so that they can, I guess, presumably build a city outside. And so like as the city builds up higher and higher, the pit is dug deeper and deeper to show both the disparity between the workers that are responsible for the city, as well as the opulence of the city lights across, you know, just across the way. And like eventually like people in the pit like are so deep that they can't even really see much of the sun, etc.
Yes, let alone the city that they've helped build. You can kind of see that their labor is what is fueling the economy of the city.
Exactly. It also felt thematically a lot like Metropolis, the 1929 film. So just very similar, like these themes where we have exploration of exploitation of workers versus people who are in the kind of opulent rich sphere of the world never get old, because there's always people who are more than willing to treat people at a disadvantage. One of the major problems in the United States, and less so in Canada, but it can still happen, is effectively the slavery of prisoners, and how for-profit prisons end up as very, very cheap and underpaid labor. And this is what ends up happening in this episode.
You know, call to mind, of course, slavery and what many would say is the continued plight for African Americans in the United States, that you just can't get out from under this pit. It's so like deep and
it's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is, like we said, as the city is growing deeper and deeper, and the workers are left in the pit. And at one point, they reach the bottom of the pit. the bottom of the ground. They've kind of hit ground that they can no longer dig up kyber crystals from. And what ends up happening is the Empire leaves all of the workers to die in the pit.
Mm-hmm.
And they've kind of built a city down there themselves, but it's more ramshackle. It's tense. You can tell that they've all been living there for quite some time. There are children down there as well, whether they've been born in the pit. That's another thing to think about.
I don't know that there was children
at the start of the short.
And so like all the children are like maybe 4, 5, 6, which is like how much time has passed.
Right. And our main character, Livy, she's probably the oldest child. Maybe she's probably under 10, maybe 8 years old or something like that. So you can just tell that these children have lived in the pit the entire time. And it's only the adults who know that there's another place, that there's a city outside, because they can't see it from the bottom of the pit. Oh,
and so it ties to the idea of sort of generations falling deeper and deeper into the system, basically, and being caught by the system that they were born into. And that, many people don't have a chance to actually get out of it because there is no way out. It is a trap. It is a pit.
Yes. There's literally no way out.
Yep. Crux plans to climb out of the pit to go to the nearby city for help. I love his name because, crux, a crux of a situation is to say, like, this is the turning point, or this is the decision point. This is the change that needs to happen.
Yes. So Crux, he makes this plan to climb out of the pit, to go to the city for help. And everyone in the pit is like, no, it's not going to work. Because, they've been downtrodden and kind of living in the pit for so long. They have no faith in other people. Like, why would someone with more come and help them? Oh, it makes me emotional, like even talking about it. And what he does is he talks to her, his daughter, Livy, and he says, if the citizens of the city follow their light, they will help us. And so he says, everyone has an inner light, no matter how dark, it's always there to guide you the right way. It lives in us all. Aww. And then he shows her a piece of kyber, and he says, the light is also in the kyber crystal, in the heart of the kyber crystal. It's in the same way.
Yeah.
And so, of course, that calls back to many instances in like Rogue One and stuff where we talk about the kyber crystal as an inspiration. So he gives that last message to Livy, and then he climbs his way up and out of the pit, and he goes. And it's at that moment, it kind of, he could make a run for it. Mm-hmm. Of course, he has his daughter, but I'm just saying he made it out of the pit and he's moving into the city, and he could just become part of the city and live there. But he knows that he has to go back and save his people. So he begins to ask for help in the city. He kind of goes up onto the stage, and you can see that the kyber is kind of running the city. At least it looked like that way to me. The lights that are behind him and stuff, they're kind of almost lit up by kyber. That it's kind of fueling the entire city, the economy and the actual fueling of the city. And so he's standing on this stage, and he kind of is trying to let people know about the pit. Obviously generations have happened outside in the city, and so they probably don't even know about the pit, that it even exists outside of their city. And so he's trying to tell them, and stormtroopers come and blast him, and he gets thrown into the pit.
Yeah. He had this, he kind of had this speech where he said, we dug up the kyber, not the Empire. We built this city, and now we need your help. There are children down there. And that kind of, that always struck me as like the big call. It's like there was never meant to be children down there, right? Like it was just supposed to be these prisoners. But what you end up doing by sort of pushing people down is you end up creating generations of people who are pushed down because people don't stop, having children. They don't, and so if there's never a way out, then it ends up just creating more and more hurt and struggle. He ends up getting thrown into the pit. I was shocked. But it was insane. I couldn't believe that that's what ended up happening. And the others kind of crowd around him, his body. It's just very impactful. Livy obviously sees her father dying, being thrown back into the pit. Of course, symbolically being thrown back into the pit, and then physically being thrown back into the pit. Oh, it's heartbreaking. And so Livy kind of takes a moment to herself, and then she remembers what her father had said about people being able to follow the light. And the thing that ends up saving her is he had told her, don't be afraid to use your voice, and remind them
of the light, because sometimes people can forget when they are, on their way up or they are at the top.
Or busy, with
their own lives.
and their own
Yes.
blinders on. Yeah.
Calling back to the pandemic being a wake-up call for many, many people in the world.
Yeah.
So he says, don't be afraid to use your voice. And I love that. I love that him calling that out and say, and of course, and then it's her voice that ends up saving them.
Yeah, and all of the other people in the pit start to join. And this is like ties to like a couple of the core ideas of Star Wars, which is like we're stronger together. It's never too late to turn towards the light. The light is always there. You just need to find it, things like that. It's all kind of the same idea. And so the people from the city end up hearing this because they
hear the chant. They're chanting the
follow the light,
follow the light, follow the light. Yeah. And so they hear them.
Yep. And they end up coming there. There's this like heartbreaking moment, 2 seconds where they see them. They're like, oh my God, there are children down there. And then they all back away, but they back away to go and get things. And the regular people, the regular citizens of the city go against what the Imperials want them to do. They're standing in the way, and there's more of the regular city's populace. And of course, the parallel to like police officers during the protests for George Floyd during the pandemic were very, very clear there.
And that you can combat authority. That having that all of us together can combat authority immediately. As soon as they see the children, they're like it's kind of a wake up call for them, for the citizens of the city, and because there are so many of them, they're able to overpower the stormtroopers and go down and help the folks in the pit.
Yep, like this is really important because we can never lose sight of the fact that others around us sometimes suffer so that we can live. And it's our duty as a society to help others. That's the only way that you can really, you have to listen to that. You have to hear that.
Mm-hmm. And again, the citizens could have ignored it as well, right? They could hear the chant, they could even physically see the pit and choose to ignore it. But luckily, because there are so many of them, they're able to, take ships down and start rescuing everyone from the pit.
Yeah, exactly. Livy takes the kyber crystal in her hand, and she's kind of on a transport back to the city, and the kyber crystal turns blue as she's holding it.
Oh, it was so good.
It was great. Yeah. And this is another idea that the story is just beginning. There's an entire story for Livy.
Right. It's such a hopeful ending. And like many of these, like you said, it was her choice that kind of took her to her journey, to her heroine's journey, as you would say. And it was, it's not the end for any of them. I don't know. It was just a very hopeful message. And when the kyber obviously turns blue, it means that she's a little bit force sensitive too. So we love that.
There's a lot of separation of feminine from masculine themes coming out in these stories.
Yes.
Multiple times. Brothers, fathers, Ben Solo lookalikes in Screecher's Reach.
Yes.
That's interesting.
One more thing that I wanted to add is that this is the only short that had a post-credit scene. If you waited till I think partway through the credits, you can see to me it seemed like it was part of the pit, that there's this giant boulder, and on the boulder is almost it's a painting, a graffiti like painting of Livy and Crux, and it's them fighting the Empire. And I just thought that was beautiful, and of course calls back to graffiti here and the signs that originally had inspired Leandre to do this short. Yeah,
I loved it. It was great.
There's really so much to dig into in all of these.
Yeah. This was hard though. Like I felt, because it felt so, this could be anywhere here, especially in America. And
yes,
it just felt so poignant and metatextual and needed to exist. So I'm happy it does exist.
Yes. I was getting emotional while we were even just talking about it. So it's wonderful that like Star Wars gives a chance to these creators to do this.
Exactly. All right. Any other thoughts, Hammie, on this one?
Nope, that's it.
Awesome. All right. We will be back with our last Visions Volume 2 episode, Au's Song, next. Cheers. Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our music is orchestral music by Christy Carew for What the Force. You can support the show directly on Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force: Melody in Wild Space, How Rude, Anna Perez, Neil, Christian Luca, Carly Ann, Josh Johnson, Scott C., and Susan. Support the show by wearing the Force with our merch. Like and subscribe on YouTube or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other podcast apps. It helps people find the show. You can connect with us on Twitter at WT Force Show, What the Force Podcast on Facebook. Our website is whattheforce.ca, or you can join the Discord. Links are all in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.